What if the story you're being told is almost perfect, almost convincing, almost airtight, but not quite? On May 5th, the rinse recap of General Hospital, Sonny does what he does best. He checks the details. And what he finds? A gap. A small one. Easy to miss. But in Port Charles, the smallest crack can bring everything down. General Hospital, the rinse. May 5, Sonny checks Rick's story and finds a gap. In Port Charles, truth is rarely presented in full. It arrives fragmented, filtered through perspective, shaped by motive, and often concealed behind carefully constructed narratives. Characters tell stories not just to inform, but to protect, to manipulate, or to control. On May 5th, that dynamic takes center stage. Rick presents a version of events that appears coherent, even convincing. But when Sonny examines it closely, something doesn't align. Something is missing. And that absence, the gap, is what transforms this from a simple conversation into a high-stakes turning point. Because in General Hospital, gaps are never accidental. Sonny's role, the relentless verifier. Sonny Corinthos has never been a character who accepts information at face value. He listens, but more importantly, he verifies. His approach is defined by attention to detail, pattern recognition, a deep understanding of human behavior. He doesn't just hear what is said, he notices what is not said, and that distinction is critical. Rick's story, almost perfect. Rick Lansing delivers a narrative that appears structured and intentional. It contains logical sequencing, plausible explanations, controlled delivery. On the surface, it works, it answers questions, it provides clarity, but it also does something else. It avoids something, and Sonny notices. The gap. What's missing? Matters more. The most compelling element of this storyline is not what Rick says, but what he doesn't. The gap is subtle. It doesn't disrupt the entire story. It doesn't immediately expose a lie, but it creates inconsistency, and inconsistency is where doubt begins. Why small details matter. In everyday conversations, small omissions might go unnoticed, but in Port Charles, they are significant because small details often reveal larger truths. Omissions suggest intention. Patterns of avoidance indicate deeper issues. Sonny understands this, which is why the gap immediately stands out to him. Sonny's reaction. From listening to analyzing. The moment Sonny identifies the inconsistency, his role shifts. He is no longer just listening, he is analyzing. Every detail becomes relevant, every word is examined, and every omission becomes a clue. This shift transforms the interaction from passive to active. Rick's position. Maintaining control. Rick's challenge is maintaining control of the narrative. Once a gap is identified, control begins to slip because questions increase, pressure builds. Consistency becomes harder to maintain. Rick must now navigate a situation where his story is no longer accepted at face value, and that creates tension. The psychological dynamic. This interaction is not just about facts, it is about psychology. Sonny applies pressure through observation. Rick responds through control. This creates a dynamic where each response is strategic. Each reaction carries meaning. Each moment builds tension. It is a quiet battle, but a significant one. The power of doubt. Once doubt is introduced, it spreads. Sonny's recognition of the gap does not stay isolated. It influences how he interprets everything else Rick says, and potentially how others will as well, because doubt changes perception, and perception shapes reality. The ripple effect begins. This moment does not remain contained. It sets off a chain reaction. Sonny may investigate further. Rick may adjust his story. Other characters may become involved. The gap becomes the starting point for a larger narrative. Themes. Driving the storyline. several key themes emerge. Truth versus narrative. Rick presents a version of events, but it may not reflect the full truth. Observation versus deception. Sonny's attention to detail challenges Rick's attempt to control the narrative. Control versus exposure. Rick tries to maintain control while Sonny moves toward uncovering the truth. Why this storyline works. This arc succeeds because it focuses on subtlety. There is no immediate confrontation, no dramatic reveal. Instead, tension builds through. Small inconsistencies, psychological pressure, gradual realization. This approach creates a more layered and engaging narrative. The stakes increase. As Sonny continues to analyze Rick's story, the stakes rise. Because if the gap leads to a larger revelation, Rick's credibility could be damaged. Relationships could shift. Conflict could escalate. The potential consequences extend far beyond the initial conversation. Rick's next move. Rick now faces a critical decision. Double down on his story. Adjust it to address the gap. Or attempt to redirect attention. Each option carries risk, and each will influence what happens next. Sonny's advantage. Sonny's strength lies in his patience. He does not need immediate answers. He can wait, observe, collect information, and that patience gives him an advantage, because the truth often reveals itself over time. The unfolding mystery. The gap in Rick's story is not the conclusion. It is the beginning, a starting point for deeper investigation, a clue that something larger is hidden, and as the storyline progresses, that hidden element will likely come into focus. Final thoughts. On May 5th, the Rinse episode of General Hospital, the discovery of a gap in Rick's story transforms a simple exchange into a pivotal moment. It highlights Sonny's strength as an observer. It exposes the fragility of Rick's narrative, and it sets the stage for what could become a much larger conflict. Because in Port Charles, the truth doesn't always reveal itself immediately. Sometimes it begins with a single missing piece.